The entity in the field. They say every piece of land remembers what came before, and sometimes it remembers too much. This story was passed down to me through my family. It began with my great-grandfather. He was a hard man, tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who worked from sunrise to sundown without complaint. Back then, there were no tractors, no harvesters, no machines humming in the distance. Everything was done by hand: steel plow, wooden handles, muscle, and sweat. He spent most of his life in the fields, first working for other farmers. Then, after years of saving, he finally bought his own land, a wide stretch of open ground outside a newly settled village. He planned to grow wheat and cotton, a fresh start. At the far end of his property stood a single, massive tree. Its trunk was thick as a wagon, its branches stretched outward like long, crooked fingers. The villagers said it had been there longer than anyone could remember, centuries maybe. It cast deep shade even in the hottest summers, so when the work became unbearable, my great-grandfather would rest beneath it. Sometimes he'd eat his lunch there. Sometimes he'd close his eyes for a short nap. That's when the strange things began. At first, it was small. His food would disappear. His tools would be moved. The plow would shift positions while he slept. He told himself it was animals, squirrels, birds, maybe stray dogs. That's what a rational man believes. Until the day he decided to pretend. One afternoon, when the heat pressed down like a weight on his chest, he lay beneath the tree again, set his lunch beside him, closed his eyes, and stayed perfectly still, not asleep, just waiting. Then, he heard movement above him. Not leaves, not wind, something heavier. He opened his eyes just enough to see. Something was climbing down the tree. It had long, dark hair, flowing robes that looked like smoke. Its body didn't move like a person. It descended as if the air itself was carrying it. No sound, no footsteps, just lowering itself from the branches. It walked straight to his food, picked it up, and began to eat. Not hurried, not cautious, like it had done this many times before. Then, when it finished, it rose back into the tree and vanished. My great-grandfather didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. He waited until the field was silent again. Then he stood up and walked back to the village. That night he spoke to the elders, men who had lived there their entire lives, men who remembered stories their own grandparents had told, and they confirmed what he'd seen. The tree was older than the village, older than the road beside it. The entity had always been there. It wasn't evil, not exactly, but it didn't belong to the world of men. Travelers who passed that road at night were often chased. Sometimes it appeared as a calf, sometimes as a sheep, sometimes as something that looked almost human. People said it would drop from above and pursue them until they fled. No one was ever killed, but many were left shaking, crying, changed. Then one elder told him something important. Silver. It feared silver, and if you could take even a piece of it, you could bind it. So my great-grandfather prepared. He hid a small silver knife at his waist, returned to the tree the next afternoon, placed his lunch beside him, and pretended to sleep. It came again, just like before, descending from the branches, eating calmly, unaware. That's when he moved. He grabbed its hair with one hand, and with the other, he cut. The entity screamed, not like an animal, not like a person. Something hollow, something wrong. It writhed, but it wouldn't strike him. The blade of silver kept it back. And in seconds, it tore free, raced up the tree, and disappeared. In his hand, my great-grandfather held a bundle of its hair. He placed it inside a small silver box, locked it, and buried it beneath his floorboards. The elders had told him something else. Whoever possessed the hair could command the entity. The next time he returned to the tree, he called for it, and it answered, not with words, but with understanding. At first, he asked only one thing: leave me alone. Let me work my land in peace. The entity agreed, but it continued its mischief elsewhere. So, eventually, my great-grandfather made a different offer. He would feed it, properly. In exchange, it would help him. And that day, beneath that ancient tree, a pact was made. Food for labor, peace for cooperation. And in return, the entity swore it would never harm his bloodline for 7 generations. The following day, he brought enough food to feed 50 men. Bread, meat, everything he could afford. The entity consumed all of it, every last piece. Then, it vanished into the tree. When my great-grandfather returned the next morning, the entire field had been plowed. Perfect rows, straight lines, not a stone out of place. From then on, every season went the same. My great-grandfather brought food. The entity plowed. That was it. No miracles, no altered weather, no cursed harvests, just labor. But that alone changed everything, because one man could only work so much land. Now he didn't have to. With the heavy plowing done overnight, he was free to expand. He bought neighboring plots, cleared new ground, planted more rows, worked longer days. What had once been a single man's farm slowly became several fields, not through magic, through scale. While other farmers exhausted themselves breaking soil, my great-grandfather focused on planting, on maintenance, on growing his operation. That's how he prospered. Not because crops grew faster, not because storms stayed away, but because someone else was doing the hardest part of the work. Within a few years, he owned far more land than he ever could have managed alone. He built a larger house, provided well for his family, and became known as one of the most successful farmers in the region. No one knew why. Before he died, my great-grandfather made one final decision. He opened the silver box, removed the hair, and carried it back to the fields. No one knows exactly where he left it. Some say beneath the roots of the old tree. Others say he scattered it across the soil. But by morning, it was gone. He understood something important. If anyone else gained control of that entity, they wouldn't stop at farming. After my great-grandfather passed away, my grandfather searched for the box. He wanted to understand what his father had done. He hoped, quietly, that the power might still remain. Not for control, not for greed, just to ease the work. He pulled up floorboards, checked walls, looked through every hidden place. Eventually, he found the silver container, still sealed, still cold in his hands. But inside, there was nothing. Empty. My grandfather wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was disappointed. But he respected his father, and he respected his wishes. Some things are not meant to be held, even when they offer help. So he closed the empty box, put everything back the way it was, and never searched again. The entity was never summoned after that. The fields were worked by human hands once more. The farm continued. The harvests came and went. Ordinary again. The pact remains 7 generations. It will not harm our bloodline. But it was never promised to leave. To this day, it has never touched our family. But people still see things on that road. Shapes moving between fields. Animals that vanish when approached. Figures beneath that ancient tree. Especially at night. Because some agreements outlive the men who made them. And some things never truly leave the land. They just wait.